Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics. Today we have a 2018 Dodge Ram. The problem with this truck is the power steering has stopped working. The steering wheel is really hard to turn. When the customer dropped off this truck, I asked him what happened exactly. He told me that everything was fine until he tried to jump start his friend's vehicle. One of his friend's vehicle died in a parking lot and he went there to try to start it. They jump started it, and after that his steering wheel became hard. So his power steering system quit working after that. So it sounds like they jump started that vehicle. While they were doing that, someone connected the jumper cables backwards, which must have burned something. I'm assuming maybe a fuse for the power steering motor has blown or something. So the vehicle is here so we can figure out why the steering wheel is now hard to turn. So let's go in the vehicle and confirm the complaint. After confirming the complaint, we're going to talk about what directions we're going to go so we can figure out what's causing the power steering wheel to be hard on this truck. So now I'm going to start the engine so we can confirm the complaint. So right there, as you can hear, the engine is running, and I was told that there is a message on the dash that says service power steering. So right there, I don't know if you saw that, we have a message here that says service power steering, okay? And there's a symbol of the steering wheel over here. Okay, we have one brake light out also, and the license plate light out, and this tire pressure monitor light over here is flashing. So we have a sensor that's not working. So we are not here for this light, for this tire pressure sensor light. We're gonna let the customer know, but we're gonna focus on this power steering system that's not working. Okay, all right, so you saw that message on the dash. So now I'm gonna try to turn the steering wheel. I don't know if you can tell, but the steering wheel is really hard to turn. Watch. You see that? When the power steering system works properly, once you put your palm on the steering wheel and you turn the steering wheel, you can turn it pretty easily without any effort. But right now, as you can see, I have to fight this steering wheel, like I'm applying a lot of force on the steering wheel to try to turn it. Okay? So something is definitely wrong here. All right, so customer's complaint confirmed. So now I'm gonna turn off the engine. I'm gonna turn the key on. I'm gonna connect the scan tool to the vehicle so we can scan the power steering control unit to see if we have any trouble codes in the electronic power steering control unit. So I'm gonna get the scan tool connected and then I'll bring you guys back up. Alright guys, I got the scan tool connected to the vehicle. So now let's scan the control unit on this vehicle. 2018 Dodge Ram 1500 with a 3.0 liter. So we're gonna display all systems list. Alright, so we're gonna do a code scan. Let's scan all the control units on this vehicle and see what we got. Alright, so the scan tool is done scanning all the control units on the truck. So let's see what we got. So we got 0 trouble codes in the engine computer, 0 codes in the transmission control unit. We have 2 trouble codes in the anti-lock brakes. The first trouble code is U0101, lost communication with TCM. And then the second one is U0100, lost communication with ECM/PCM. Now let's scroll down and see what are the trouble codes we have in the other control units. We have 3 trouble codes in the BCM. Let's keep going. We have 2 trouble codes in the electronic shifter module. Now so far I haven't seen the power steering control unit yet. Okay, the electronic power steering control module. Okay, so we got 1 code in the HSM heated seat module. Okay, so we're not going to worry about these other trouble codes for now, like this tire pressure sensor 1, no signal. So this is the sensor on the left front tire that's not working. Okay, did you notice what I've noticed? I have noticed that the electronic power steering system control unit is not listed here. Okay, so it looks like we cannot communicate with the electronic power steering system control unit. Okay, now we're gonna keep all these codes in mind. We can print out all of these control units with the codes in them and let the customer know. And then if the customer wants us to address these codes also, we can do that. But for now, let's focus on the power steering system that's not working, because right now we are here to figure out why the power steering wheel is hard. Okay, so I'm gonna back out of here. Let's see if the power steering system control unit is listed here. So we got the engine, transmission, ABS, airbag, electronic shifter module. Let's keep scrolling and see if we can find it, because this is pretty much all the modules listed here. Okay, so here it is, electric power steering. So I'm gonna click on it. Guess what? No communication. Check the following. Yes, the key is on. Okay, so we cannot communicate with the electric power steering system. So let's back out. Let's try to communicate with it again. So we cannot communicate with the electric power steering control module. Okay, so no comm. So what do you do when you cannot talk to a specific module? Well, we're gonna address this just like we address any other no communication problem. Okay, if you're not talking to a control unit, usually the first things we check is powers and grounds at that control unit. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is we're gonna pull up the wiring diagram of the electric power steering system and see what wires send power and ground to the electric power steering control unit. Okay, so now let's go to our Sure truck and repair information. Okay, so it's a one-page wiring diagram. So right here, electronic power steering circuit. So let's find our control unit first. So here's the control unit. So EPS, electronic power steering module, on steering rack assembly. So the control unit is part of the steering rack, the rack assembly, the rack and pinion. Okay, now this module over here has one ground wire, and it looks like this ground comes from the intelligent battery sensor. So this control unit over here, this EPS module, gets power from the battery, and then there's a power wire over here, this switched B positive wire, so this red wire. If we follow it, let's go up. Right here you see that it goes to this fuse number 2. Okay, and it says battery fuse terminal, fuse 2, 125 amp fuse. So this is one of the big fuses on the battery terminal. Okay, so this fuse over here, fuse number 2, sends power to the electronic power steering control unit. And then there's another fuse over here, fuse 78. It's a 10 amp fuse, and it is in the power distribution center assembly, left front of engine compartment. So we're gonna check these two fuses first, fuse number 2 and fuse 78. Okay, so this electronic power steering control unit has two wires that supply power to it. So this wire over here and this one over here. So let's go under the hood and check these fuses first. If the fuses check out okay, we're gonna go to the power steering control module itself, okay, this EPS module, and we're gonna make sure we have power and ground at this module on the rack and pinion. Okay, so now let's go under the hood and check these fuses first. We're gonna check the fuses first. I brought my scan tool here. So let's start by checking fuse 78 first. So this fuse over here, 78, it's a 10 amp fuse. So it's gonna be in this box over here. So let's open up this box. So we're gonna use this test light to test our fuse. Now the key is still on in the truck. So we got our test light connected to ground. If I touch positive, if our test light is good, it should light. So right there, our test light lights. So let's find fuse 78. All right, so here's fuse 78. I hope you can see right there. So right there, it says F78 right here. ECM/PCM/EPS. So EPS stands for electric power steering. Okay, good. So 78 should be this one over here. So here is 78. So 78 is this fuse over here. So this one. 1, 2, 3. So here is 78. So one side of the fuse has power and the other side of the fuse has power as well. Okay, so these fuses over here are good. I'm just checking all these fuses down this line just to double check. Okay, so our fuse is this one. So the fuse is good. So fuse 78, this fuse is good. So now let's check fuse number 2. So fuse 2 is a 125 amp fuse. So it's gonna be this one because it says right here battery fuse terminal. Okay, so this fuse is gonna be on the battery terminal. Battery fuse terminal. 125 amp. So if you look at the positive terminal of the battery, there are two fuses over here. There's this one. This one is a 250 amp fuse, and then there's another one over here. Okay, so this one over here is a 125 amp fuse. So I believe this is the fuse that sends power to our electric power steering control unit. Okay, so this wire I believe goes to the electric power steering control unit. Bam. So check that out. So I have my test light connected to ground, right? If I touch here, I have power. So all of this is connected to the B positive terminal of the battery. So when I touch here, I have power. I touch this one, I have power. So I'm touching this stud here, I have power. But when I touch this stud, my test light does not light. How is that? So we touch here, the test light doesn't light, but when I touch here, the test light lights. So that means this fuse over here is open, okay? This fuse is blown. So this is the problem, guys. Okay, so this fuse over here is what's causing the steering wheel to be hard. That's why our steering wheel is not working, because when they tried jump starting it, they jump started it backwards and it blew this fuse. Okay, check this out. So our test light lights when we touch this, but nothing happens when we touch over here. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna find a big fuse. I'm gonna get a jumper wire, okay, with a fuse on it, a fused jumper wire. I'm gonna jump this stud, okay, and this one to see if our power steering system will work after that. So I'm gonna jump this stud. I'm gonna get power from this stud and send it to this stud over here, because I know this stud is what's sending power down this wire that goes to the electric power steering control unit. Okay, once again we have power here but no power over here. So I'm gonna get a fused jumper wire so we can jump these two studs together to see if our electric power steering system will now work. Okay, so I'm gonna get a fused wire and then I'll bring you guys back up. So I went through my fuses over here in the shop. The biggest fuse I have is an 80 amp fuse, so right there, but I don't have a fused jumper wire that can hold this big fuse. This is a pretty big fuse, so I don't have a holder for it. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna use these jumper wires on each side of this fuse, okay, to send power to this stud over here that's missing power. Okay, so since we are suspecting this fuse over here being open, what we're gonna do is we're gonna send power from this stud to that stud over here. I don't want to send straight power to it because maybe we have some shorted components down this wire, so we don't want to burn any wires. So I'm gonna put a fuse between these two terminals, and after that, if we can communicate with the electronic power steering system, at that point we will know that the problem is this fuse. We're gonna replace this fuse and this vehicle will be fixed. Okay, so now let's look at our wiring diagram again in case you have a question about what I'm doing. So this fuse over here is the problem. So this fuse sends power to the EPS, okay, the electric power steering module. So we are bypassing this fuse up here with a different fuse, okay, this fuse over here with another one. And let's see after that if we can communicate with the electric power steering control unit. We will know that our problem is that fuse. So right now, if we back out, when we go to the electric power steering control module, when I click on it, watch what happens. Okay, we have a no COM message. So let's back out. So now I'm going to jump these studs over here, okay, with this fuse. So I'm gonna connect this over here first, and then this one we're gonna connect to this side. Okay, so now let's see if we have power here now. As you can see, we now have power here. Okay, we got power here, we got power here, so we have power on both sides of the fuse. Okay, all right, so now let's look at our scan tool and see if we can communicate with the electric power steering module. So let's click on electric power steering right there. Okay, now we can read codes out of it. Okay, look at the code. The code says ECU reset / recovery occurred. Okay, so the ECU reset because it was no longer receiving power. Okay, let's back out. Let's clear the code. Let's try to read the code again. As you can see, no codes present. So let's back out. Okay. Right there, electric power steering. Now, let's click on it again. Let's see if we can get into it. So as you can see, now we can get into it. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now, just to duplicate the fault, I'm going to disconnect this wire. Okay. So I got that disconnected. At this point, we will not be able to communicate with the electric power steering control unit. So let me click on it. See, no COM. Okay. So we know what the problem is. Let's try to communicate with it again. No COM. Okay. So let's back out. Now let's reconnect our jumper wire here. Okay, now we should be able to communicate with it. If we have power here, we should be able to communicate with it now. Okay, electric power steering, let's click on it. Okay. So our reset code, oops, as you can see, our reset code is back. Okay, so I'm gonna clear the code. Now if I go inside the vehicle and start the engine, the steering wheel will be soft now. Okay, so let's back out. Okay, now we're talking to the electric power steering control unit. So now let's go inside the vehicle and start the engine. We're just gonna leave this fuse here for now. Let's start the engine and see if we can turn the steering wheel easily. All right, so I'm gonna start the truck. Okay, so the first thing I noticed is the steering wheel is really soft now. It's so easy to turn it. Watch this. I'm just putting my palm on the steering wheel. Watch, I'm not applying any effort on the steering wheel. Okay, look at this. So easy and so smooth. Okay. Good. All right. So what's the problem, guys? I'm gonna turn off the engine. Let's go back under the hood and then I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna replace so this problem can be fixed. So let's turn off the engine. Let's go back under the hood. We are back here under the hood. We tested the steering wheel. The steering wheel is now soft to turn because we can communicate with the electric power steering control unit. Okay, if we go to our wiring diagram once again, the problem is this fuse over here. Okay, so this fuse is blown. That's why the steering wheel is being hard, because when this fuse is blown, there's no power going to the electric power steering control unit, and it causes this whole system to be inoperative. Okay, so once we replace this fuse, this will be fixed. So this fuse over here, this guy needs to be replaced. Okay, as you can see, we have power here and we have power over here, but after I disconnect this, we lose power at this stud. Okay, so that's it, guys. We were able to duplicate the fault. We have to replace this fuse. Okay, this 125 amp fuse. Once we replace this, this will be fixed. Okay, so I'm gonna call the dealer. I'm gonna call the dealer to get this fuse. I'm gonna get this fuse from the dealer. After I get this fuse, I'm gonna install it. This is really easy to replace. I'm gonna undo these nuts over here, and then this hole. I don't know if they sell this fuse separately or if I have to get the whole battery terminal to replace this fuse. I don't know, but I'm gonna call the Dodge dealer and get the part. after I get the part, I'm gonna install it, and then I'm gonna bring you guys back up so we can verify our repair. After that, we're gonna wrap up our video. Okay, so if I had power at this fuse, the next thing I was gonna do was gonna be going to this control unit and making sure that we have power and ground at this control unit. But since we didn't have power on this side of the fuse, that's why I just stayed over here. And as you guys saw, after jumping this fuse, our power steering system was able to work just fine. Okay, so I'm gonna get this fuse and then I'll bring you guys back up. We are back on this truck. It is the next day. I ordered a new fuse from the dealer. Here's the part number. Okay, so we're gonna replace this fuse. This fuse is blown. That's why the power steering system is not working. Okay, so this is the main power wire that goes to the electronic power steering system. So I'm gonna get the fuse out of the bag. So here is our fuse. Okay, so we're gonna remove this one and install this new one there. So now let's do that. All right guys, so now we're gonna install this fuse. I'm gonna undo this nut over here. All right, so here comes the defective fuse. I'm gonna put it right here. So now I'm gonna install the new fuse. We're just gonna push it down like that. Okay, just like that. And now we're gonna install this. Alright, so we got the new fuse installed. I'm gonna grab a test light so we can make sure that there is power at this stud over here. If we have power here, that will tell me that our electric power steering system will now be working. So now let's check that. Alright, so we're gonna use our test light here. Watch this, we got power here. As you can see, we now have power over here too. Okay, so power here, and now we have power on this stud. Remember before we didn't have power on this stud over here. Okay, so at this point, if we go inside the truck and erase the trouble code, our electric power steering system will now work. So the problem was this defective fuse over here. Okay, so this fuse got burnt when they tried jump starting a vehicle that had a dead battery. Okay, so they jump started it backwards. So now let's go inside the vehicle and verify our repair. So as you can hear, the engine is running, and now the steering wheel is very soft. Okay, the steering wheel does not require effort to turn it. Remember before, I had to really fight the steering wheel to get it to turn. So now once I put my palm on the steering wheel, I can turn it easily without any effort. Okay, so I'm gonna turn off the engine. We're gonna turn the key on. So this is fixed, guys. Now we're gonna scan the electric power steering system control unit and erase the trouble codes. I'm pretty sure there is a code in the control unit. And after that, we're gonna wrap up this video. So our vehicle is right here. Okay, the most recent vehicle is this Dodge Ram, the most recent vehicle that we scanned. Okay, so let's see what we got. so let's scroll down and go to the electric power steering control unit. As you can see, we can talk to it. Let's look at the codes. We have one trouble code, okay, C2128 ECU reset / recovery. So this trouble codes is set in memory because the power supply to the electric power steering control unit was interrupted at some point. So let's back out and clear this code. Let's read the code. As you can see, no codes present, so that's good. Remember before, when we did a code scan, the electric power steering control unit was not listed on the list of the control units that this vehicle has. So now I'm going to do a code scan. The electric power steering control unit should be listed here now, because now we can talk to it. We should be able to see it over here. So let's see. Now we have 23 control units. So let's scroll down and see if our electric power steering control unit will be listed here. So here it is. Electric power steering and 0 codes in it. Okay? Remember before it wasn't listed here. Alright guys, so this is fixed. I'm gonna get the scan tool out of the way. Let's start the truck. So right there, now the steering wheel is turning easily. Okay, so let's drive up a little bit. Okay. Alright guys, so this is fixed. I'm gonna turn off the engine so we can wrap up this video. Alright guys, so I'm gonna leave it right over here. This truck is fixed. The problem was a blown main fuse that supplies power to the electric power steering control unit. The owner of the truck tried jump starting a friend that had a car that couldn't start. The battery was dead on that car. They tried jump starting it. I'm pretty sure they must have done it backwards. It blew that fuse. After that car started, the power steering system on this truck was inoperative at that point. The steering wheel became hard. It was hard to drive. So they brought it to us. We looked at it. We figured out that that fuse was blown. We replaced the fuse. Now all is well and the truck is fixed. So I hope you liked the video. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching. See you next time.